Hi, everyone. Lauren Culp here, President and CEO at CUInsight.com, and I'm bringing you a 3 questions video interview today with a really special guest. Joining me is Adlumin's Chief Product Officer, Jessvin Thomas. We are going to have a great conversation about technology, about security. So, Jessvin, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren.
Let's dive into the first question here, which is generative AI and ChatGPT have been a really big topic of interest for credit unions this entire year. What is your take on the subject, and how can credit unions benefit, and what risks should we be aware of?
That's a great question. I guess it shouldn't surprise me as the very first question out the door. There's been a lot of conversation about generative AI, everything from boardroom talk when it's coming to what's happening with OpenAI to technology to security risks. And even sometimes just simply understanding this. Is it just like a hyped thing? Is it something that's going to be a fad? So the first thing is I kind of liken this to the next killer app. So if you think of like, something that's there's a foundational element and then there's a killer app. So like a foundational element is something like computing, and a killer app was like spreadsheets, and a foundational element was the internet, and a killer app is like the browser or email or something. And I look at ChatGPT in the same way, or just even generative AI and chat-based functions, that I really think it's going to be, think of it as like a killer app, that it is going to be something just like email. It's like, it's not going away. It might be the bane of your existence every day, but you face it, you see it, you use it all the time. That's where it's going. And I think one of the things that's really important to think about, or to use it where, is I really recommend people using it every day. And we'll talk a little bit about risks, because I do think in different, especially regulated environments, there's concerns about data leakage, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you can use, just even going on your phone, using it personally and just giving it a try, I think is important. If you think about, again, going back to the advent of email and spreadsheets and whatever, the browser, like just being educated in that way will be important. And over time, you're going to pick up certain ways of working, or like, just like, how to use search in a certain way, or, email etiquette. So I recommend even some simple things. Like I use it all the time for actually Excel, where, hey, I've got this data in this column and that data in that column. Write an Excel formula for me that will help me add it up in a certain way. And you'd be surprised how quick that can help you. Or I had to do something for time zone conversion. It was like, I've got this time and this person in that time. Give me some recommendations on when I should meet. So you can even do simple things like that. It doesn't have to be something complicated, like write all this code that does this, or write a haiku. But it is something that I think will end up being a killer app. And most importantly, it will be, when we talk about risks, I don't think it's just something that can just be stopped by a particular application. It's going to be integrated in everything we do, like whether it's search, whether it's Excel, whether it's whatever, it's going to be integrated into applications. But I do know that the kinds of risks to consider on it are, number one, is the information correct? So just like if you use a calculator and you have an idea in your head of a formula, and you mistype it or you do something wrong, you get the wrong results, you need to check it yourself a little bit. You need to have your own little test to validate, is this something that's really accurate or not? And two, something of really significant concern is data leakage. So if you paste in data that's important to you, that's sensitive data, you should not consider that to be privately held. And that's why in the beginning, people are trying to do things like just block the URL. But I think over time, it's going to be embedded everywhere. So you're going to have to learn the etiquette and teach your employees the etiquette of how to use these kinds of tools. But I think it's something that's definitely not going away.
Well, speaking of data privacy, that leads into our next question here, which is, so many credit unions were impacted by the software vulnerability Citrix bleed, and lots of credit unions are indirectly impacted by third-party outages. Are there lessons that we can learn from this?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I'd say that the biggest lessons to learn are, they're not technical, they're more business oriented. Is that, A, this problem's not going away, which we all know, but we're just reminded every day. And things are just moving faster and becoming more impactful. I think that what surprises people the most, and I think the kinds of questions that I hear from our customers that are credit unions are, my boss tells me I'm spending more time and more money on security every day, yet the problem seems to be getting worse. Like, maybe I should just give up. And I think that's the hardest thing to tackle, is that it is something that is going to constantly, we have to evolve towards, constantly we have to invest towards. It's something that we have to drive towards automation. And ultimately, we're going to have to continue to move up the maturity curve. So some credit unions are doing things like third-party risk analysis or vulnerability and software patching. That's not going to go away, but it's not going to be something that's one and done. It's going to be something that says, all right, this year I did analysis of my third-party impacts, and I just did like some check the box. Next year, I'm going to have to do like a real impact analysis and do some testing. The year after that, I'm going to have to involve the board, or I'm going to have to do something like that. So I think the biggest takeaway from it is it's not one and done. It is something that every time you think everything's covered, it's just coming faster. And I think it's going to be important to consider constantly having a plan for a constant improvement of maturity, and making sure that it's clear to people that there's no silver bullet for this. It's something we're going to have to be constantly on top of.
I think that's so insightful for credit union leaders. And I know, to your point, it can feel frustrating when security kind of continues to be an ongoing concern. But of course, it is such a critical one for our industry. To widen the focus maybe a little bit beyond just security, is there a book that you've read recently that you think might be of interest to our listeners?
That's a good one. So, there's a book I'm reading right now that I really like. It's called Wiring the Winning Organization, and it's by Gene Kim and Stephen. Stephen is last name is escaping me for right now. Stephen, if you're listening, I apologize. I have to look it up, but it's called Wiring the Winning Organization. And why I like it is actually the fact of these two authors. Gene Kim is actually very well known in the DevOps space, in the technology DevOps space, and then Stephen's from the business side. And so it's a really interesting book around how to improve performance with an organization. They talk about three key things: simplification, slowification, and amplification. And if you want the details of that, you have to read the book. But I found that it matches a lot of what I've seen. There's a lot of insight from Stephen as a retired admiral, and work he's done in the military, and Gene in terms of what he's seen in technology. So definitely a book I recommend. It's a relatively easy read. It came out recently, and I've been finding a lot of value in it.
I love it. Well, we're going to link to that book here in the post for anybody who is listening, in case you want to check it out. We're also going to link to some contact information for Jessvin and the team at Adlumin, in case you would like to know more about the work that Adlumin does and how they can help support your credit union. Jessvin, in the meantime, thank you so much for being with us today, and we look forward to hopefully running into you in person sometime soon.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot, Lauren. Appreciate it.
Thanks.